This is a video that I wish that I could have watched several years ago. It would have saved me so much time and self-doubt and confusion and just really wondering what is wrong with me. So, welcome to a conversation that more women actually need to have. Today, we're going to talk about midlife reinvention, not because it's something trendy, but because this is something that may be happening to you right now. And understanding what's going on can really change how you experience this season of your life. I'll share just a little bit about my personal reinvention. There was a time where I felt empty and just kind of stuck, but I had no idea what was going on. But I made a decision that I was not going to be feeling like I was lost. You know how people say a woman has let herself go. Usually they're talking about gaining weight or somebody who quits taking care of her appearance. And yes, I had let myself go from that perspective. But I got this revelation that I had truly let myself go. I didn't know where my self was. So I really didn't recognize me anymore. And I really didn't recognize this woman that I had become. So I was just kind of going through the motions. And then as I approached like maybe my mid 40s, I realized something had to change. I wasn't going through the rest of my life like that. So I started making some different decisions. I decided, okay, let me just start taking care of my body. I started exercising. I started trying to sleep better and eat better. I worked on my appearance. So eventually I went back to school. I did all of these wonderful and amazing things. And then there was a year where my theme for that year was I choose joy. So every day as I woke up, I was like, okay, what's going to give me joy today? And that was the way I lived my life. And that was how I worked through my reinvention. I knew that I was transforming. And when I was in prayer, I had gotten a vision of a butterfly. And there was this whole butterfly metaphor thing going on in my life. And I'm going to talk about that in the next video. But it was so interesting that once I made it to the other side and I was joyful and peaceful and happy, I decided that I wanted to bring more women along with me. And it wasn't until I started preparing for YouTube lessons and studying and trying to figure out, just what's going on with women over 40 that I came across the term midlife reinvention. And when I first saw the term midlife reinvention, that is what happened to me. That is what I went through. It's like a light bulb went off. And so I want to talk to you about what that is and to let you know that you are not alone. A midlife reinvention typically happens in your 40s or maybe early 50s. But that's the time where you intentionally decide to make some changes. When you intentionally decide that you're going to re-examine your values, you're going to re-examine what you are doing, and that maybe you're at the middle of your life and you have this realization that you're not going to be here forever. So how do you want to live your life? And you start living your life differently. So many times people are going through different transitions. Maybe they have an empty nest. Maybe you're like me and you end up getting a divorce or your relationship changes. Some people are taking care of elderly parents. We look at our bodies and we're like, oh, our bodies are changing. So there's different things that are going on. And some women will even have a career change or a career pivot. Maybe they never loved their job in the first place, but now as they have approached midlife, they said, no way am I living the rest of my life doing something that I do not want to do. And in other areas, they just quit tolerating nonsense. And so with the midlife reinvention, you decide, I'm going to do something different. I actually coach women and I have a reinvention framework. It's called the Author Your Life Framework. The gist of it is, I believe that life can be seen like a book and that each person is the main character of their own life. But in addition to being the main character, you also get to be the author. Personally, God is my co-author, but you get to do what you want to do. So as the author, I get to decide what the plot is. I get to decide what the main character does. And so the midlife reinvention is kind of like a plot twist. Many times that's when women realize that they are the author because previously they had been letting other people write their story. So really, even though it was their story, it was like they were the supporting characters in their own lives. And so with this reinvention, it's like we realize I I hold the pen or I have the keyboard and I get to write my next chapter. And so that's how I define this midlife reinvention. But let me tell you a few things that a midlife reinvention is not. A midlife reinvention is not a midlife crisis. Because generally, when you think about a midlife crisis, you think about people who are in complete emotional distress and they start making impulsive, irrational decisions that they regret later on. Sometimes a midlife crisis comes before their reinvention, but still there is that difference. But I will say this though, the term crisis in Japanese has a dual meaning where it's also the sense of danger, but it's also opportunity. And it's like the danger part of it, the emotional distress part is one side, where the reinvention part is the opportunity side. But most people, when they get to this period in life, there are some shifts and transitions that occur. So during this midlife reinvention, you get to rediscover who you are. Oftentimes, it's going back to who you were actually created to be before everybody else told you who you needed to be, before you started giving so much of yourself away that you didn't recognize who you were anymore. It's a time when you get to reassess your values and then align your life according to those values, where you look at what's really important. And if you are in midlife, I encourage you to spend some time figuring out what is important to you at this point in your life. For me, I realized I needed to have joy. I needed to have peace. I needed a little bit more time freedom. And this also was important that I be able to impact other people. So I have always been a teacher, whether it was in Sunday school or it was at work. I've always been in a position where I teach because that is what I do. But at this moment in time, I know that my purpose is to teach women that they can change their lives, that they can be happy, that they can create a life that they don't need, that they can create a life that they don't feel like they need a vacation from. And so that's what I'm doing right now. That's what's important to me. And I also get to live that out in front of others. I get to live that out in front of my children and my nieces and my nephews, that even the next generation can look at me and say, wow, I can be happy, I can be whole, I can continue to make a difference even as I age. And so those are some of the things that are important to me, but you have to figure out what's important to you. As you are going through midlife, I do want you to know that you are not alone. I see you and I understand. I do work with women in a coaching capacity. And if you feel like you'd want to talk to me about whether it would be a good fit for us to work together, I do have a link in the description so you can schedule a complimentary consultation. I call it a next chapter conversation where you and I can just talk about what your goals are, where you are, and whether or not it would be a good fit for us to work together. I generally do group coaching because I like the concept of community and accountability. If this video resonated with you, I do have many videos that talk about reinvention after the age of 40. These two specifically will really help you to go to the next level. I encourage you to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Be blessed.